Plutus Sports Analytics is a company based on minimizing the uncertainty in sports betting to help you maximize your profit. Newfoundland's first sports analytics team provides daily predictions for all Major League sports so you can win big. Whether you want to hit MLB picks out of the park or get a slam dunk on your NBA betting tickets, Plutus is a company of choice. Head to PlutusSportsAnalytics.com. That is PLUTUS sportsanalytics.com and use promo code JSP20 for 20% off their deadly service. And now, let's get to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode number 166, dedicated to a man who on January 14th, 1975, was named the NBA All-Star Game MVP, Mr. Walt Clyde Frazier. And as always, thank you for listening and downloading another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by Mr. Jeff Hunt, the host of the Jeff Needs Sports podcast, to come on and help us recap and talk about Monday's college football playoff national championship game. During the episode, or during the conversation that Jeff and I have, you will hear a couple things. One, I say early on that this is the first time Jeff is on the podcast. That statement is false. Back in the summer, I had a Be the Change series when there was racial and social unrest in our country. And Jeff and Chris LeBron, they're both two good buddies. They came on the podcast and did a joint episode with me during that time. If you have not listened to that, I encourage everyone listening right now to go back and listen to that conversation. Got a little bit deep. Not about sports, but I do believe it's something that everybody should listen to. Number two, I was under the assumption that the microphone that was not working properly, which is why there was no Monday's episode, was working correctly, but it is not. It may sound good now, but during the conversation that Jeff and I had, I thought I sounded okay from the feedback that I got. No, it didn't. It's not up to par. So that microphone, when it comes to Zoom conversations, will not be utilized. I believe when I'm using the normal recording software that I'm using right now, it does sound okay. But from now on, got to go back to plan B to use the new boy. I was so used to the old boy, I was trying to stick with that. But every good thing, sometimes they have to come to an end. So I apologize. This will be the last time that happens. We'll be transferring to the new microphone. And also, we'll be actively upgrading to get more professional sounding equipment and sound as well to keep the good things rolling. One of those good things is good sound, clear, crisp audio for you to enjoy every time you press play on an episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. Also, one more thing, almost forgot. At the end of the episode, I will come back on and give you my picks for every divisional round game in the NFL playoffs this weekend. 4 games, 4 big matchups, a lot to watch. Get to sit back, relax, sit on our couches, and watch and enjoy hopefully, really good football. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a trip to Nashport, Ohio, to enjoy my fun conversation with Mr. Jeff Hunt, the host of the Jeff Needs Sports Podcast. And joining us now here on the Jay Stevens Podcast, had a little delay getting Monday's episode out, which never came out because of microphone issues, but my old microphone is working once again. And today we have a gentleman that I respect. We've done some shows before together, and he's now making his first appearance here on the Jay Stevens Podcast. But I don't believe, Jeff, it'll be your first time coming on. It is my friend. I'll say friend. Don't talk much, but I will say my friend, Jeff Hunt. Man, Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Honestly, man, this is an honor to be on the official show. We did some great stuff last summer. You've helped me out all year, but it is truly awesome to be on the Jay Stevens Podcast, man. I'm so glad to be here.
I appreciate that, man. And Jeff, before we get to talking about the game, the national championship, which was completely one-sided early on, at one point it was 14-14. And then Alabama did to the Buckeyes what they did to everybody else. Could you please, I know you're part of the Off the Ball Network. You're doing some podcast stuff, some things that aren't sports related. What kind of things are you doing in the podcast space that keep you busy that other people may want to hear about?
Yeah, it's going crazy, man. First of all, you mentioned the Off the Ball Network. That's the group that, Chris LeBron, Mo Murphy, and me, started. We're up to about 12 members now. You were a huge part of the start of that. We think highly of you, and you've helped us all out along the way. First, I want to put that out there. Yeah, I do. Jeff Needs Sports is my sports podcast, mainly football. It's going to start venturing into some different things here soon. I'm going to do some sports movie stuff that I've really wanted to do for a long, long time. Yeah, the offer's coming, man. Because I'm mainly a football guy. And I'm mainly a football guy because that's what I love to break down. I enjoy all the sports, but I don't necessarily want to. I don't want the NBA and Major League Baseball and stuff to be my job all year. So as the NBA guys kind of take over, I'm going to venture into some sports entertainment stuff and things like that. And then I do a little show called Jeff Needs Help, and that's a general discussion podcast where I interview people from all over the world. We talk about anything and everything in pop culture or just whatever's going on. So yeah, it's been pretty cool, man. I've had a busy summer and a busy fall, and the winter in 2021 is looking great, man. And you've been a big help once again.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. Who are some guests that you've had on Jeff Needs Sports just during this football season?
Yeah, it's been pretty cool, man. Because I do the Buckeye remix. I started that up when the season finally started. We know how long that took, and then during that, like I had Mo Murphy on. He's part of the network from Up in Flames. Earlier in the year, I had Lucy Rodine. She's basically just a giant personality, a TikTok legend. She's doing some big things now. Had her on to discuss, the championship weekends. And then, we do a ton of weekly shows with just people popping in from all over the country. I'm like, we've probably had 10, 12, 13 different podcasters, jump in and out. The guys from Off the Ball, they've always got somebody different on. I'm sure I'm forgetting. I now bring some of the guys from my general podcast world over too, Brandon Roy from, Dad's Worldwide. He came on when talked football. My friend from Canada, we're going to do some LA Rams stuff this week. Those guys like to talk sports, so they like to come on my show, so it gives them that vent. So yeah, it's been crazy, man. I got a pile of guests, loaded up for the the year coming up. I wish I could remember everybody, but you know how it is, man. You work with so many people, like unfortunately, like you can't remember them all. But it's been really, really fun. Really fun.
That's true, man. You get so busy with this podcast space and podcasting multiple shows, some that are sports related, some that are not sports related. You do tend to forget who it is that who you're working with. Not forget who you're working with, but there's so many names, so many really good guests that sometimes they do escape your memory. But Jeff, man, you're busy, and I'm really looking forward to this sports movie review that you have going on. I mentioned to you earlier that I was on a radio show earlier today. This has been recorded on Tuesday evening, and I dropped a reference to the Mighty Ducks because and we'll get into this a little bit later, but I mentioned I all season long I've called Tommy Togiai and Haskell Garrett the disruptors. Up the middle, they disrupt everything. I liken them to when one of them is not there to the Bash Brothers, and one Bash brother is not in the game. Their effect on the game is not the same. And I know it's a little tease for things to come because I know Ohio State fans, if you may be listening or watching this via YouTube, you may be thinking, oh, that makes a whole lot of sense. I never heard that before. Well, I've just been saying that all year, just on a different podcast where I talk Ohio State every single day. Speaking of Ohio State, hate this transition. And Jeff and I will explain why we hate this transition. But when you watched Monday's game from start to finish, first, what were your thoughts going into the game? Then as the game transpired, just general recapping what took place Monday night in Miami Gardens, Florida.
Yeah, man, I'm not going to lie. Actually, going into the Clemson game, I mean, you and I both had a lot of discussion about this. Both our shows covered this, how we thought our realistic approach to that game. And that shocked that just shocked the heck out of me. The Clemson game, what an awesome, victory. They looked good in every facet. That was the team that we hoped to see all year. We won't get into, the crazy year that they had. We've, beat that, it's over. So going into Alabama, I'd raised my hopes, and I was like, okay, maybe the separation between these teams isn't what I thought. Maybe the talent gap isn't what I thought. Justin Fields, that's the quarterback. When I watched that Clemson game, like that's the quarterback that I knew we were getting this year. So I had allowed, I shouldn't say allowed myself. They deserved it. I'd really allowed myself to get the hopes up. But then as the week went on, and you just touched on a couple of them, once I heard the defensive line, there might be issues. I'm like, well, that's bad because we really depended so much on that those disruptors that you're talking about. And I knew that wasn't a good sign. And then, the game starts, and I'm like, okay, I wasn't worried about Bama scoring. And then, Sermon gets hurt right away. I'm like, he's been on a roll. They're really leaning on him. And that's when I knew that from watching our defense this year, especially the secondary, I hate to keep bashing on these guys, but I knew what to expect out of that end of the game. And then I knew that once we started losing, a piece here and a piece there, that it wasn't going to be good. And it pretty much went it went how I thought it was going to go. If you watched, say Ohio State play Nebraska or one of them, and that's what turned out. But, that doesn't mean I was disappointed, but it was kind of shocking.
It was shocking, Jeff. And as I was going into the game, as soon as I found out Togiai and Tyreek Smith were not available,
Oh, man.
I had been going on shows for a while saying, oh, Buckeyes are going to win, because I truly believed that the defense would have their best game, just like the offense the game before had their best game. I had a belief that the scheme would change. Not that the players would play out of their mind, but the scheme itself would change. But no, the scheme didn't change. The players didn't play out of their mind. And it was bad news bears, man. For Alabama fans, though, just a general college football fan, I think it was a great end to a season. Now, you don't want to watch a blowout, but from start to finish, man, and Jeff, I know you may agree with this as well, Alabama was clearly the best football team in college football all year long, from the beginning to the end. And I had a conversation, I'll get into this later on, with a gentleman about the best college football teams of all time. Even after the game, I was listening to Fox Sports Radio, and I think Dan Byer was hosting at like 2 or 3 in the morning. I couldn't get to sleep, man. It was just one of those nights.
I hear you.
And so he was asking, he was like, he's on my wavelength. Like, I don't do this like spur of the moment, like prisoner of the moment. Oh, this so-and-so team is the best team of all time just a couple hours after or 30 minutes after they won that national championship. I don't get into that. But Alabama has their own right to possibly, I'm not saying yes or no, possibly be in that conversation, because, Jeff, they were dominant, not just in regular season, sometimes dominant in the SEC championship. They somewhat handled Notre Dame, and against Ohio State on Monday, Jeff, even though the game was 14-14 close early on, it surely seemed like, even though it was a tie game, Alabama was in full control the entire time.
Yeah, totally, man. And I'm like you. I respect the game, and I love the game. Yeah, I didn't want to see that happen to my team, so to speak. But you can't ignore the greatness of it. It was a weird season, all SEC schedule, and it doesn't matter how you want to argue about that's a debate about the SEC, how great it is, how great it isn't. Doesn't matter. That's a big conference schedule. You still slip up. There's no quote unquote easy games. Even the bad teams have really good athletes. And when you get hit by, big physical athletes, it still hurts, whether you're winning by 30 or, 40. But I was so impressed with them, man. Saban had them ready, and they were two different teams. They were just in two different. I keep telling everybody they were at two different stages of their season last night. Ohio State was, keep holding things together with duct tape and razor wire, and Alabama was physically peaking, mentally peaking, their strategy. Like, they were really at the top of their game last night. And I actually thought, as Buckeye fans, it kind of reminded me of our 2015 championship, to where that team just ascended. And when they hit Oregon, they were just on different planes, and Ohio State was at their peak. And when a team does that in college football, man, they're hard to beat. And when they're as talented as Alabama, and they bring guys back, which is rare in college football, especially for these top 5 programs, man, that's hard to handle. You're talking, fourth-year guys that are as talented as Smith and Harris and Jones. I think it's a third-year guy, but still, just an amazing display of football and mismatches. I thought Sarkisian had a great game. I thought he did a really good job. It's easy to mismatch against Ohio State. I'm not here to bash him, but that's not super difficult to find mismatches. You know what I'm saying? We've talked about this all year, man. The answer was never there. But full credit to Ohio State. Great season. They deserve to be in that game, and they weren't as good as Alabama last night.
No, they weren't, man. And as Buckeye fans, let's go ahead and turn the page to talking more Ohio State specifically. We talked a little bit about the disruptors, as I call them, Haskell Garrett, Tommy Togiai. They are not blood brothers, but on the field, you couldn't say that they're not. They play so well together. Two defensive tackles. Haskell Garrett in the offseason, for many of you that may not know, got shot in the face, had the bullet go through both cheeks. Wow. Somehow a miracle happened, and he started week. No, I forget if he started, but he was playing so well that he ended up being a starter. I know he started week 2 against Penn State.
Yeah, correct.
And these guys, man, every single week, they disrupt everything, not just in the run, but in the passing game where no quarterback can be comfortable in the pocket. And Jeff, I think that was a big thing for Mac Jones. He did get dinged up. He did get hit a little bit. But for the most part, Mac Jones was able to get these passes off, dink and dunk, easy passes to whoever he wanted to get the ball to. One thing quickly, people knock Slade Bolden for that, knock Shaun Wade for that issue there when Slade Bolden came from the right side of the line, motion back to the left. Shaun Wade kind of jogging like he's just in the neighborhood, having no care in the world. And all of a sudden, Slade Bolden playing like he's supposed to play in the national championship, runs the route, catches the ball, and then Shaun Wade doesn't really go top speed or try to accelerate to tackle him. Slade Bolden scores in the front part of the left end zone at the top of the screen at that time. Mm-hmm. People knock that part and say, oh, Shaun Wade, that's you, which it is. But like you said earlier, it's not hard to find mismatches. And even with your best corner, who is an AP All-American, Sarkisian knew he's not all the way there in the head. Here's a way for us to get past him. Now, maybe Sarkisian called this to maybe get somebody else open. But Slade Bolden was open. The motion was perfect. Pre-snap things that they had done all game, all year long. They worked once again against the Buckeyes. I know many Buckeye fans didn't like seeing this kind of perfect storm happen in the biggest game of the year.
Yeah, it was rough. It was a perfect storm too. But you're so right, man. It was such a bad mismatch between those teams because, Ohio State, it's crazy. And one thing I'll say is, like, everybody, of course, just like you said earlier, you've got to go like all the way after these games. All I hear is like, the defense has got to change this and that. Last year, Ohio State I understand this year they finished 122nd in passing defense. Last year, they were 1. Like, it doesn't take long to turn these things around. Like, Ohio State, this isn't a 10-year problem that's been going on and we can't fix. Guys leave, man. When guys leave when they're young and you don't bring anybody back, like if we bring 2 of our defenders back that went to the draft last year, it makes a difference in that game. Like, that's just college football today. And when Alabama, like, once again, they bring these guys back, it's tough. But the mismatches, Alabama did an amazing job this year of what they did with motion. If they motion and you were in zone, they knew where to find the holes. If you were in man-to-man, you were cooked. And that's credit to Mac Jones. Like, I don't think he's the most talented quarterback. I don't even think he looked like the best quarterback last night. I thought Justin Fields, especially in the first half, looked like I would have no problem drafting that guy 1 or 2 or whatever he's going to go. But Jones does know where to throw the ball to. It doesn't matter how open the guy is. That's the offense he plays in. Those guys are good, and he hits the open guy. And Najee Harris is such a problem out of the backfield. I got a lot today of, like, we needed to blitz more, needed more pressure and all this. And they want it to look like the 86 Giants defense out there attacking these guys. But I'm like, when Najee Harris wanders around and knows what to do, and if he's not picking up the pass block, he's picking up 12 yards and a first down. He is so good at that. And he did it last year too. That was the difference in the LSU game. I'm sure you remember the LSU Alabama game last year. It was Najee Harris versus Edwards-Helaire. That's what they did to get their quarterbacks out of trouble. And when they're that good at it, and then you've got these receivers out there that, even Waddle had, I mean, this guy's on one leg, and he was picking up first downs. It's just a matchup nightmare. And we've talked about it all year. We didn't have the personnel, especially at linebacker and pass coverage. There's some deficiencies there for Ohio State. Nobody's making excuses for him. It's just the truth. And it was just a terrible matchup. It really was.
It was, man. I know Alabama fans, you're probably thinking like, are these guys just like really being realists right now and not saying that Ohio State is amazing? No, this is how Jeff and I talk all the time. Like
Yeah.
we generally try to be honest and analyze things, because one thing I would hate is to come on a podcast, especially with our names on them, Jeff, and then simply be like, oh, I'm a homer. You guys can't tell me anything. My team's going undefeated. I personally thought Ohio State would lose in the Sugar Bowl. I didn't think they would get past Clemson, which is part of the reason why my mind shifted towards them beating Alabama, because I saw a shift in mentality, focus, preparation, and scheme in the Sugar Bowl, and I thought I would see that same thing against Alabama. The mismatches you talked about were so key. Trey Sermon going out, very first carry of the game, first play of the game, was horrible, going to the hospital. But it wasn't just that, Jeff. I don't know about you, man, but when Battle got hit with that targeting call, I know when you and I, well, you're a little bit older than I am, but when we were growing up, that was a regular hit, man. I mean, that was a hit.
I thought about that last night. That was how the game was played when I was, most of my lifetime.
Yeah, that was a regular hit. And so I'm seeing Battle. I'm like, wait. So that's one that used to be on Jacked Up, that I used to get hyped before Monday Night Football, which is a perfect like appetizer for the biggest game of the weekend for the nightcap. No, that's a flag in 2021. He's out of the game. I hate the ejection, but I get what college football is trying to do, what their thought was early on. I just think that rule needs to be tweaked. But Ohio State's biggest games, two biggest games this year, the biggest game last year, Clemson. That targeting call against Shaun Wade turned things in the game. The targeting call, James Skalski, Sugar Bowl, turned things in the game. And I surely thought, man, that targeting call against Battle was going to open up the middle of the field and allow Fields to hit the ball to his tight ends once again. But Jeff, he just couldn't get it going.
No, it was weird, man. And I think Sermon being out too, like Sermon did. So especially when you rewatch the Clemson game, I'm sure you saw it. And I saw it all year with Sermon, which is why I really liked him. He did he was pretty good in pass protection and pretty good at reading protection. And I really think that the biggest part of him becoming the full-time starter, because Teague had the better start of the season. The guy had 500 yards in like 3 games, and he was really running. But Sermon had a feel for the game that I think Justin started to trust, and I really think that was missing. And then Alabama was not worried about Teague leaking out for a pass, and that's huge, man. Because we just talked about the difference between Najee Harris and that's a huge gap. And they're not worried about Teague going outside either. They know that they can tackle him one-on-one when he's going, we'll call it east-west. And so then therefore, you don't leave the linebackers making decisions. You know what I mean? Like one guy go tackle him, the rest still come at Justin. And I think that was a bigger part of the game than people probably realize. If you watch what Sermon did in pass protection and in the passing game, I think that was a huge factor. And then, Alabama's defense played a little better than I thought they would. And then I think there was honestly, I think Justin was sore. I'm not making excuses, but I think he was, when he had that breakaway run with, I believe it was early second half. Maybe it was late first half. He had the breakaway run. He scores on that. We've watched him for 2 years. He scores on that 80% of the time, and he slowed up. So I think he was in a little more pain than we thought he was, but that's part of the game. That's why I like the playoffs, is because you start bringing that factor into it. Some people don't like that about, the extra game, because an injury can cost you a national championship. So I guess it's how you look at it. But like I said, I thought Justin played great. His ball placement, I think we'll put it this way. Mechanically, I thought Justin played great. I understand the stats weren't there. I wish the Smith and Jigba touchdown would have stood. That was really a good play. I think that kid's a really good player, and I wanted that for him. I liked how the team, fought through it. You could tell that they understood the weight of the season, and I think there's a huge sigh of relief. As much as they wanted to play football, I really think that it was such a stressful season. It just looked different at the end of that game. They didn't look as much dejected as they just looked like, wow, it's over. You know what I mean? Like they really did try hard. And I think they were also a little bit glad that it's finally over, man. I believe that.
Yeah, man. It's a tough season for Buckeye fans, but for Alabama fans, man, I don't know where you start, because on defense, they have dudes all over the place. What's the kid's name? Christian Barmore, 6'5", 310.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, how do you that's not normal. It was a time when we talk about Alabama players, Nick Saban gets them all beefy. They can't move. They're stiff. He ain't stiff. He's beefy, but that young man can move. and he has guys.
Those guys
Go
used to go
ahead.
to LSU. Sorry to step in, but that's what LSU used to have. If you think
Yeah.
about it, 10 years ago, that was the difference. And now those guys, now every guy's going to Alabama. It's unfair.
It is, man. So you got those guys on defense, and on offense, the best offensive line voted on, won the award in the college football season this entire year. We talk about Mac Jones, and going into the season, there was a lot of, I think it's Bryce Young. Bryce Young should start. He's a better quarterback. People that I was listening to talking SEC with Philip Jordan in the summer, and I heard him talking about Mac Jones with the Alabama beat writer. He was like, "Wait, guys, Bryce Young is good, but what Mac Jones did last year, it was amazing, and that was not something that you should say. Oh, he didn't play well enough to keep his job. Mac Jones, yeah, it was easy for him. Not going to say he's a typical Alabama quarterback." But the offense and the athletes on Alabama made his job very, very easy. But you got Mac Jones, you got Najee Harris. You lose Jalen Waddle in October, and then this little skinny kid that I say looks like Marvin Harrison, Devonta Smith, he just like blows up. Over 100 catches before the national championship. 12 catches, 215. I think 3 touchdowns in the first half, man.
Basically, a half. He played a half.
In the first half. And these guys are just loaded all over the place. And if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm very happy, very excited. And Jeff, they have a really good shot. I normally don't say this, but they have a really good shot to go back to back.
Oh, I totally agree, man. I think Jones leaves. I don't know why you don't leave on this high point. I also don't really think that I won't say it doesn't matter. He had a great season, but I think you can replace him. I think Alabama can replace him a little easier than maybe Ohio State can replace Fields because of the different types of quarterbacks. Alabama, was Sarkisian leaving? There's so many question marks.
Yeah, true. Good point.
But somehow Alabama, and nobody knows, and I mean this is like an honest thing, not like they're anything trickery, but they keep these guys. And if you keep a couple, like Devontae Smith should have went pro last year and we never would have saw this season. And that's what, Ohio State, or Clemson, Georgia, they lose these guys early and you never get to see that. They go to like Olave is not going to stay. Olave could be that type of guy next year. Wilson's going to be great, and then he's going to go. You know what I mean? Like, and that's fine. But when you can keep a couple of these guys and you just see what happens in that next year, let's be honest. Devontae Smith would be one of the best rookie wide receivers in the NFL if he would have went. He would be in the top 5 or so with Jefferson and them. And he's still playing for Alabama. It's such a mismatch, especially when you got an Ohio State defense that lost everybody. It just didn't match up, And as far as the Ohio State defense, I don't know what you do with that. But, man, yeah, Alabama, I mean, they're going to be ranked 1 going into the next year. I suppose maybe Clemson because we've seen Clemson quarterback. I'm not going to try and say his name again because I have slaughtered it. Oh, you got great at it, man. You did great. I started calling him DJ because I was just disrespecting him and his family. But nope, they might be number 1. Georgia's going to be up there, of course. But absolutely, Alabama's the king of the block. And until somebody knocks them off in the SEC, like I don't see a change. I don't think LSU has the team next year. I don't think they're back to last year's team next year, especially. I don't think that coaching staff is Alabama's coaching staff. I know it's not an SEC show, but I don't think that they necessarily just plug and play down there in LSU like they do in Alabama, man.
No, and LSU, I think they may be under probation for like
that's right.
Sanctions or whatever, recruiting things are going on there. Georgia's an interesting one because JT Daniels should have been the starter week 1, and I was assuming that. I forget the young man's name that transferred from Wake Forest. Jamie Newman. Yes, Jamie Newman. He would have been the starter, but then he said, "I'm not playing." And then I automatically thought it should have been JT Daniels. Was he medically cleared? Was he not medically cleared? I don't know. But I surely thought with everybody else that was there, he should have been the starting quarterback. They didn't play him until the latter part of the season. And you saw what happened once that young man stepped on the field. Part of the reason I think Alabama can possibly, it's a big ask, but possibly go back to back is because the SEC is not going to be, it's going to be okay. Not going to be the elite that it normally is. You're going to have Georgia, going to have Alabama. Florida will have a new quarterback. Dan Mullen, will he be there? Nobody knows. Tennessee, not good. LSU, they had so many guys opt out that they could be starting fresh again next year.
Exactly.
You don't really have much competition in the SEC like you used to. Mississippi State, No. Ole Miss, no. This not A&M. Maybe Jimbo gets it, but
And
I
they
still don't
lose.
trust. But they lose Kellen Mond, and so you're
Yep,
having
exactly.
a new signal caller, and it's a new guy. Didn't get much run, so there's so many different things in Alabama, man. It just seems like very much like Ohio State, very much like Clemson, but they're on another level. They don't have to rebuild; they just reload. But they're reloading with veterans on the field at the same time.
That's
And
the
these, like you said, these guys don't leave. And Jeff, it just makes it so much fun to just watch college football, watch Alabama, and just say, look, this is what I love about this program. They keep turning out great talent year after year after year.
It's the greatest dynasty. It's the greatest sports dynasty I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm 45 years old, and I mean that because I know how hard it is to do it in college football. In 2015, they were like, "Oh, the Buckeyes will, Urban Meyer's going to win 3 championships." He didn't, and he had a great, like they've been awesome, but they still just have the one. And Alabama, Alabama has 3 playoff championships and 6 at Saban's. I don't even understand those numbers. That was like growing up when they told us about Rockney and Bear Bryant and them. That's who we're looking at. But I never thought that college football could have something like what he's done there. Again, it's truly amazing. Man, there's something. You got to admire the program. You just have to.
You do, man. And Nick Saban, I didn't know. So I've heard all my life growing up. I heard, like I said, I'm younger than you. I'm 32. You're 45. So there's an age gap there. But when I was a younger kid, you telling me about you tell me Tom Osborne. I have to now go to YouTube to figure out what he did in Nebraska. You tell me Steve Spurrier. I saw some of the latter part, but Steve Spurrier, I still miss some of what he did down at Florida. You tell me Larry Coker. No, Larry Coker had 2 good years based off of Butch Davis's players, and then Larry Coker after that, after Ohio State won the national championship, the 03 Fiesta Bowl, he fell off, ultimately got fired in 2006. Urban Meyer in Florida was not touching what Nick Saban has done. Les Miles can't touch it. Urban Meyer at Ohio State. The one thing with Urban Meyer that I think may have changed things in 2012, if Ohio State was not under probation, that team may have been a team that could have gone to the BCS National Championship, would have also faced Nick Saban, would have faced Alabama. Because no, it would have been the next. I forget that was that year or not.
Well, I was going to say, you might be thinking of the year too when they lost they were undefeated the next year going into the Big Ten championship game and lost to Michigan State.
Michigan State.
They were going to play for the title that year too. Like we forget about these things. That was a tough one. That's one of the. I put that one out. Like I've erased that one from my memory because I'm like, what just happened? But yeah.
Ohio State fans, they love Jim Tressel, not the guy that left college football in the most nice way. People still remember what happened there with Terrell Pryor, those tattoos, all that fiasco. He could have, but he ran into Urban Meyer. It's something about Nick Saban, man. There's something I didn't think I would ever see this in my lifetime. I've been able to witness Phil Jackson. I've been able to witness Bill Belichick. And now we're witnessing Nick Saban. I heard he's going to turn 70 very, very soon. Will he hang it up? I don't think so. He's young.
He doesn't feel it.
He looks healthy. He looks young. He looks happy. And the way that he looked at the end of Monday night's game, he smiled. Normally that may be a sign of he's leaving, but he's having too much fun, Jeff, to leave and to stop doing what he loves.
No, he does a great job, and this is why I always thought Urban Meyer, he's a great coach too. Is that you don't necessarily have to. Like Nick Saban is one of the better defensive coaches, especially secondary coaches of all time. But he learned how to transfer and delegate and hire a coaching staff and trust them. Like for him to have, for him to hire Lane Kiffin, I still never got that, and they made it work. You know what I mean? Like he worries about what's best for his team, not what we see. And Sarkisian was the same way. When they hired him, what he did at USC, I'm like, whatever. No, I was completely wrong. You know what I mean? Let's face it, Ohio State in 15 transformed Alabama into what they are now because that's when they realized that like, oh, okay, we got to change this offense. And they have not been the same since. And you watch them from, 15 to 16 when they won the championship, that's a different offense. And they have not slowed down. Like, they won a championship scoring, what was it, LSU that year? They scored like 10 points. And now they average, I think they had the highest scoring offense in history, if I'm not mistaken, like 49 point something points. But that's credit to him, a 70-year-old coach, and he's got the highest scoring offense in history. That's amazing.
Jeff, we're going to end with this question here. Going back to Ohio State, something you and I both watched closely all year long. Quarterback Justin Fields. I'll end it with one thing. I know we could go two, but we could be here all night.
Yes.
Justin Fields, the quarterback, great talent. He has all the tools physically. Sometimes mentally, I think he lacks in some areas. Do you think it would benefit him to stay in school instead of going to the NFL after this year?
The answer is yes. I absolutely do. I think he is the perfect example. I honestly think because of this year, I think if he had the typical year that we expect, I think he would be in a different place. But just the way this year was more about like just trying to get through the games and doing whatever he had to do. And he had a couple great games, especially Clemson was just unbelievable. But that's all based on like, yeah, he's already great, but man, I honestly think that if he played another year and they really just let him like a Mac Jones style year that we just saw with full offense, full dedication to it, really learn how to run it. But then again, a lot of NFL guys will tell you they really don't care as much about that because they're not running that offense. I mean, that's just a debate between scouts and stuff. The answer is yes, it would definitely benefit him, and also it's not going to happen either. I mean, I understand that, but I really do, and I don't mean to say that Justin has any deficiencies, but I think that even I tell you what, I will say the same thing about Lawrence. Just so I'm being fair here, I would say that Trevor Lawrence coming back would have made him a better NFL quarterback. I've got there's a few holes in his games that I picked up that I'm concerned about, but I mean, both these guys are, just awesome talents.
Go ahead, man. You let the cat out the bag. What kind of two things for Fields and Lawrence, if they stayed in school, what could they work on?
Well, I mean, Fields obviously, I mean, you've said it 100 times on your show and it's reading a defense, man. Like you watch that Northwestern game. I mean, they play a quarter zone defense and man, when those guys jump receivers, Justin takes too long to move through his progressions and you don't have that time. And we saw it. There's quite a few games this year. Credit to you. You pointed out several times, but like, you got it. Let's put it this way. It's the clock in the head. Yeah. And, the best ever, because I know this is crazy, but just as far as like the way they manipulate the pocket and the way they play, like I look at like when you try to look at NFL comparisons, I think Justin could be a Tom Brady type as far as the way he runs an offense. People don't get excited. Just the way he runs an offense, because Justin doesn't want to run. He just happens to be super, super physically talented. But you've got to, it just takes too long. I mean, you've said it all year, man. Like you got 2.5 seconds. If that ball's not gone, then it's a scramble drill. When he's taking 4 seconds, it's time. The defensive backs get a break on the ball more. They're looking at your eyes. He's not holding the safeties every time. His arm skills are great, but it's definitely that. And Lawrence, man, I suppose what I see is he doesn't get knocked as much as I think. I know Lawrence doesn't run a lot. But man, he really depends on that RPO game. That's not maybe NFL teams are going to totally go to that. I don't see that because your quarterback just gets hit too much, and these guys are huge that are hitting him. But man, that play action RPO game, I thought they really leaned on that a bit much this year, and he's great at it in college. But I worry about things that translate. I thought his freshman year, towards the end of his freshman year, that championship run, he looked like a better NFL type quarterback than he did towards the end of this year. Maybe they're just trying to get through the year. He is physically gifted, just like Fields, as to where Fields seems like he never wants to run. I think he kept the ball one time on the option all year. Lawrence, he really likes that, a lot of those fakes and all that I just don't know if they're going to be there. And so when he goes to more of we call it drop back, but everybody's out of the shotgun now in the NFL. That worries me if he's not going to lean on that a little bit too much. So that's probably the two things that I see that both of them, if they came back in a year, could. If you look at Mac Jones, he can step into the NFL and probably be a better rookie quarterback simply because he's a stand and throw, play the system guy. Now those other two are going to pass him up. I understand that, but I'm saying as of going into next season.
Dude, it's kind of funny, man. You talk about shotgun, and I say this all the time, 3, 5, 7-step drop. And I know how football has changed as far as like you're not under center. But in my mind, when I think about a quarterback, it's like, oh, under center, get the snap, 3, 5, 7-step drop. No, it's shotgun. You're really not moving as much as people did when we were younger.
And you touched on it. That's probably what's ruined the clock in their head because you don't have that you don't have that timing route. I mean, you played, football just like I did. It was like the quarterback, if it was a 3-step, then I was a wide receiver. So I knew like how long my route was. That's where your timing came from. And maybe in shotgun, those guys are so comfortable, and especially at Ohio State or Clemson, when you've got the great offensive line, you got all the time in the world, your wide receivers are better than the other teams 90% of the time. It is easy to fall into those 60-yard bombs that Fields is amazing at. There's one of the best deep balls I've ever seen in football, period. So I can see how you can get spoiled, but man, it's hard to speed that up when you get to the pros.
It is, man. Jeff, this has been fun. A lot of fun. Went a little bit longer than expected. When we talk football, you and I both love it so much. Time is kind of just goes out of our mind. If you could, Jeff, take some time. Let people know where they can connect with you on social media, with the network, Off the Ball Network, and then where they can listen to your shows as well.
Yeah. I ask everybody to go to offtheballnetwork.com, check out all the guys. We do a ton of fun articles. We do articles where we analyze stuff. We do power rankings. I do a lot of rankings on mine. I do a lot of top fives. The NBA guys come up with some crazy things. There's always content going on there. So that's offtheballnetwork.com. You can find me at Twitter at jhunt006. I'm always on there blabbing about something. I try not to offend anybody. We have a good time, but I like to talk, most, like I say, football, sports, but, I might be talking comic books, movies, whatever, man. It's fun. So I ask everybody to follow me there. Facebook, Jeff Needs Sports or Jeff Needs Help. Jeff Needs Help is going to be firing up. And then, of course, all your podcast platforms, anywhere you listen to your podcast, you can find Jeff Needs Sports or Jeff Needs Help. So I appreciate all the listens, the shares, and the reviews. And I appreciate all your help this year, Jay.
Yeah, man, no problem, Jeff. My man, Jeff Hunt, thank you so much for coming on here on the Jay Stevens podcast. Got you on. You'll be on once again down the road. We're both football heads, football nerds, but you never know what Jeff and I may talk about the next time he's on the podcast. Jeff, thanks so much for coming on here on the podcast, man. This was fun.
Yeah, you're the best, man. Thanks.
Once again, I want to thank Jeff for coming on the podcast, and I want to apologize again for the audio issues while recording with Zoom when Jeff and I talked earlier this week after the college football playoff national championship game. I thought the audio issues were fixed. Your boy was wrong. We'll look to have them fixed and get them better for Monday's episode as we go back to our regularly scheduled 2 episodes a week. That's the plan. Hopefully everything falls into place so that can happen. Guys, NFL playoffs are resumed in a couple days. Super Wildcard Weekend was fun. I did watch a little bit of the Saints and Bears on Nickelodeon. I like that a lot. Noah Eagle is going to be a star in the broadcasting space. If you have not heard him at all, he does radio for the LA Clippers, does some stuff for the Tennis Channel. And I believe his first NFL game that he ever called in his life was in the playoffs, and you could not tell it was his first time on that big of a stage in the NFL. 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday, another action-packed week of NFL playoff football on Saturday. Rams and Packers, Ravens and Bills on Sunday, Browns and Chiefs, Bucks and Saints on Saturday. I'm going with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers to beat the LA Rams on Saturday as well. Lamar Jackson, you won 1 playoff game. You will not win 2 this year. I have Josh Allen and the Bills winning that one at home over the Baltimore Ravens. I just realized this. I'm going home teams the entire way, going chalk. This was not expected. It's just how I think things will fall. A little nervous about Sunday's matchups, but as I'm talking, I'm going to roll with what's right here on my calendar. Chiefs over the Browns, Saints over the Buccaneers on Sunday night. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can also send all of your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for a new podcast to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are both willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode number 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 166 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I will see you next time.